Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. I'm sitting in the backyard of my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden in Zone 9A. Today is Hausfrau Friday. This is a segment that I try to do every Friday-ish. Can't complain about the beautiful breeze today. It's been scorching hot. So normally on Fridays, I talk about the way that the three ethics of permaculture, earth care, people care, and fair share, kind of interweave into our daily lives and how we look at the domestic sphere, our home, the very humble kind of ordinary actions in our lives, caring for our house, preparing food, raising children, how we can look at those and shape those through the lens of permaculture design in order to have more sustainable and more regenerative lives. So it's been really hot here. It's going to be hot going forward for a little bit. I know much of America is experiencing a heat wave. I made a post on social media a couple days ago where I mentioned a recipe that I was making, one of my favorite summer recipes, which is a carrot, basically like a mix between a pickle and a salad. And that post got lots of engagement and folks saying, share the recipe, share the recipe. One of the things that we as a family do a lot in the summer is that we try not to heat the house up. We try not to run the oven or the stove, and we cook outside as much as possible, and we eat a lot of cold dishes. So we eat a lot of cold sandwiches. I make a lot of panzanella. When we do cook outside, we have an air fryer outside. I plug in the rice cooker or the crock pot outside so that I don't heat up my kitchen, so I don't have to run the air, the house stays cooler. I also make a lot of pickles and salads and slaws. And that way I can get the maximum amount of produce from the garden consumed without having to cook, right? And I have talked about this a fair amount. In hot weather is when we tend to have these large yields of things like berries, beans, later on tomatoes. And I don't can those in hot weather. I don't heat up the house that way. I typically will freeze those things and process them later, or I'll make pickles. Okay, so I made this carrot slaw, and I'll walk you through the recipe in a second, but I basically eat a huge heaping serving of this every day for lunch with some other things. I think the day I posted it on social media, I was having leftover pizza with it. But right, raw veggies are really good for us, and sometimes when we have a lot coming out of the garden, it can be challenging to find a diversity of ways to prepare those dishes. So we're trying to be frugal, use what's available in our yard, or what's available locally at the farmer's market, etc. So we have a very short local food chain that has a minimal carbon footprint and a minimal environmental impact. We're trying to eat foods when they're fresh in season, have the most nutrients when they are picked really fresh, and get the maximum nutritional value for our bodies, right? And again, frugal as well. We're trying to use what we have. We're trying to cook with what we have. And so I find I'm constantly experimenting with no-cook recipes, especially that involve fruits and veggies. One of my favorites in the summer is that I make a lot of panzanella, which is basically bread salad using leftover stale sourdough bread, and then kind of like whatever veggies and fruits. Someone commented on my Facebook post about how like peaches and tomatoes go great together. One of my all-time favorite summer recipes is panzanella that has peaches and tomatoes in it. When we're talking about, those slow, small impacts in permaculture principle, slow, small solutions, little things add up. And not just in terms of the great big scheme of sustainability, and obviously we need policy change, and we need hugely impactful change by the folks who make the biggest detrimental impact, but each of us can do small things that do add up and are purposeful and are meaningful. But also just like making little tweaks in the course of our daily life can increase our quality of life significantly. I don't want to have to run the air. I don't want a scorching hot house. I don't want to stand over a hot stove on a 100-degree day and cook. So having things in my repertoire that mean that I don't have to do that really increases my ability to kind of weather and get through hot weather. And so I think that those little things are important. Let me show you how I made my salad, and I'll come back at the end.
For the full detailed recipe, please see the video description below. This recipe is inspired by a Korean carrot salad. However, you don't have to use 100% carrots. I often use a little bit of Napa cabbage or some green onions or whatever else I happen to have lying around. This recipe is really quick to put together, and you can scale it up for a larger batch. I start with about 2 pounds of carrots, give or take. Before we deal with the carrots, let's prep the other ingredients. Normally I would use fresh garlic, but I'm out, so I'm using powdered here. So 2 cloves of crushed garlic, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of smoked Spanish paprika. The full recipe is in the description below. I'm also going to add 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now you can add more or less of the next ingredient depending on how spicy you want it. This is gochugaru. I get it at the Korean market. It is my favorite red chili pepper to add to pretty much anything. I'm adding 1 teaspoon of the Korean pepper flakes. Sometimes you can find them in different grinds. I like the more coarse ground. I use these in all kinds of dishes, stews and soups and salads. They're definitely my favorite pepper flake. Feel free to experiment with other spices that you might also enjoy, maybe 1/4 teaspoon of coriander or a little bit of celery seed. Carrots are already naturally sweet, but I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of natural sugar. One time I made this pickle with apples added to the carrots, and then I left out the sugar because it wasn't necessary. This is how most of my cooking goes. I often don't follow strict recipes. I just put in what seems appropriate, what tastes good, and using what I have on hand. Obviously, because this is a pickle and we want it to be salty, we need salt. I have pink Himalayan salt here. For every 2-ish pounds of shredded veggies, you want to add 1/2 of a tablespoon of salt. Okay, once the spices are all measured out, it's time to move on to the carrots. Now, these were dug just a couple of days ago. I ended up not having quite enough homegrown for the recipe and had to use a few store-bought as well. I just eyeball it. I'm trying to grate enough carrots to fit into my whack jar here. And again, sometimes if I don't have quite enough, I'll use a little bit of an end of a Napa cabbage or 1/2 an apple. I always peel my carrots. Ages ago, Cooks Illustrated taste tested non-peeled and peeled carrots, and unpeeled carrots provided more of like a dirt undertone to the food, and I didn't want that. So here you can see I had to resort to using a couple of store-bought carrots versus homegrown, which are not grown in deep sand. They're just a little bit more wonky looking, but they have a stronger, better flavor. I'm a big fan of using my grandma's box grater. Although I have a mandolin and I have a food processor, I rarely use them. I just like using the box grater. So the goal here is not to make like a lacto-fermented pickle or anything like that. This recipe will have vinegar, it will have salt, it will have sugar. However, I just want all of those flavors to kind of marry overnight. I'm not looking to have a full ferment. So you can make this the night before, leave it on the counter, and it will be ready the next day. After that, I do put it into the fridge. Okay, here's all my carrots. Again, if I don't have enough carrots, I can shred some other veggie to make a mixed pickle. I have a lot of summer squash. After I filmed this, I went on to make a separate little pickle out of just that summer squash from the garden. I like more of an Asian-inspired dish, so I use rice vinegar and sesame oil, but you can use any vinegar and any kind of neutral oil that you want. I love that strong sesame flavor with carrots, though. I think it goes great. The original recipe this is inspired from used 1/2 cup of oil for every 2 pounds of veggies, and that's way too much for me. So I use a little less than 1/4 cup, and then I kind of eyeball my vinegar between 1/4 and 1/3 of a cup of vinegar. Again, I am not too precise with my measuring. It's what seems right, what I kind of intuit as I'm going along. Again, we're not making a lacto-fermented pickle. It's really kind of a mix between a salad and a quick pickle. If you want a little bit more of that Asian-inspired flavoring and you like your salad a little saltier, you can also add a little soy sauce at this point. And then we want to go ahead and add all of the spices at once. Not authentic, but I want it a little spicier. So at this point, I also add a heaping tablespoon of chili crisp. You can see we go through a lot of it in our house. I think it adds that extra layer of smokiness and spiciness that really, really completes the pickle. Now I want to thoroughly combine everything, kind of massaging those carrots a little bit, working the salt into them, all of the spices into them so it's evenly distributed, and then that can macerate really nicely overnight. Don't be afraid to use your hands. They're great tools. This size batch will last me 3 to 4 days in the summer. Again, I like to eat a lot of it, and you can make bigger batches if you have a larger family or if you are eating larger quantities. This is a raw dish, so technically it's ready now, but I think it's better if it sits overnight. I always want to take a little taste test and make sure I don't need to tweak it and add a little more vinegar, a little more salt. This round is good. Now I want to put it into my whack jar so it can rest overnight. This is my funnel collection. This is my favorite funnel. I have no idea where I got it. I think at a yard sale. This is a great funnel. It's not like we're making kimchi or anything here. This is just going to rest overnight, and we don't have to worry about leaving headspace or making sure that we have a brine or anything like that. We're just packing it into the jar until it is all in there, and then we're just going to let it sit on the counter overnight. I make this in the evening. When I get up in the morning, I go ahead and put it in the fridge. It's ready to go. That's it. It's just going to sit there, and I will take care of it in the morning. I don't want to let any of this goodness go to waste, so I have a little bit of sourdough left from dinner, and I'm going to scrape out and enjoy that little bit of salad stuck in the bowl. As my mom always said, waste not, want not, or permaculture principle, produce no waste.
Okay, thanks so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I had a big heaping bowl of carrot salad with a little bit of pesto and pretzels for lunch. On hot days, I tend to love having something cold and something a little bit acidic and something salty. It's much more enjoyable for a meal in the heat of the day. So please don't forget to click like and subscribe. Thank you for all the folks who said such kind things about this like minor eyelid surgery that I had earlier in the week. It's looking a lot better, and I'm very grateful that it's healing super well. So thank you for your kind comments. So next week will be a little bit of a weird week. I am going to Atlanta with my daughter B for a big mock trial competition. Also, I have to mom brag for a second. B earned her GED today, so that was a long process. I know some of you are like, how could that be possible if she's going to college? Well, this was her senior year of high school, and here in Oregon, a lot of kids go to college part-time their junior and senior year while they finish high school. And because B was a homeschooler, we don't have like a homeschool diploma here in Oregon. And so in order to be able to move on seamlessly in her academic career, then she needed to get her GED. So I'm really proud of her. She's going to school full-time this summer, working. Check out her video. She works in homeless advocacy and prepping for this very competitive mock trial competition in Georgia, and then studying for and taking her GED. So super proud of her. Thank you to the folks who have been supporting me on TikTok, because I was able to pay for that trip to Georgia through TikTok. So hugely impactful, the folks who followed and watched me over there. It meant that I was able to get compensation for that content that paid for this trip and made that possible for B. So your viewing of my content has enabled and empowered her to have this trip. So thank you. That's enough of that. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe. I hope you are staying cool and enjoying all the fresh, wonderful things out of your garden as well. And I will be back very soon. Don't forget to check out my Patreon, or if you like the work that I do and aren't really up for like a monthly commitment, I also have a PayPal in the description below. Thanks.